irrigation, bioswales, and I'm gonna show you around the park, name the trees. So you guys, you have a question about a tree, just let me know or comment, and yeah.
I'm Jesus. I am also a fourth year landscape architecture student.
My name is Remilo, and this is my third year in LA.
And I'm Daniel Lopez, and I'm a fourth year landscape architecture student.
Hello everyone, Professor Ronald Hampton. I'm a policy urban design consultant. Outside of being a professor, I also am a principal equity strategist for the LA Civil Rights Department.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Ramirez. I actually work for a nonprofit in Northeast LA called LA-4872-02. First and foremost, I'm Ronald's friend, and I got him to participate on our board, so he's one of our board members for the nonprofit as well. I'm happy to join today.
And I'm Edgar Colio, first year landscape architecture student. I did a little bit of freelance landscape design in Santa Cruz County, and I'm excited to be here.
I'm Jenna. I'm a third year landscape architecture student.
Awesome.
Like, had all the skills to work with the land and promote it in ways that was reciprocative, right? Where the humans gained and nature gained. It was like this respectful relation. They were killed. You know, they were. I don't mean to laugh. I guess that's how I put it. But like, you know, they were killed. You know, they were taken away from their homes. They were put into missions. You know, they were made to lose like their ways of knowing, to become more westernized, and you know that in tandem with like the invasives coming at it again and again, it took over. And what makes an invasive is that you take it out of its natural environment and you put it in a new one where it can't compete. So you don't have predators, right? You don't have other creatures eating at it. It's like it's free to do whatever it wants. And normally the weeds, when they're out of their own place, they're even bigger than they were back home, right? Because they have no competitors. They have nothing to take it out. And the black mustard, in particular, has something called allelopathy, which is basically plant warfare, where it changes the composition of the soil. I don't know if it's like chemically. It could be chemically. Sometimes it's pH levels. Sometimes it's other ways. But I think chemically it starts to destroy the fungi under the earth, the mycorrhiza, that has beneficial relationships with the native plants, right? And so it does this so it can weaken the native plants from doing it. So that's one way. The other way that it does it, and I think the most common way we outcompete native plants is that they're just sprinters. Think of it as sprinters, right? So as soon as the rain falls, they're up. How fast does one of these grow?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, how fast?
That's in a week or a lot of them pop up.
Like if it's like this 1 week, how big would it get next week? And then 2 weeks from then, and then 3, and that's it. And then for a native plant, it's like, so they're marathon runners, right? So the native plants are marathon runners, and the invasive plants are sprinters. And they sprint to what? Like, what's the finish line? The finish line is the seed, right? It's the seed. And so, like, just imagine them, like, and then they throw out the seed, and then they create what we call the seed bank. And so the next rain, you have like 10 native plant seeds and like 10,000 invasive plants in like a circle this big, right? So who's gonna win the next one? And so that just keeps happening over and over and over and over and over and over again. And then you just have this. I mean, so the native plants are still there, but they're just in seeds, right? So I don't want you to think that it's dead. It's not. There's nothing dead about it. Like the invasive plants are there, and they're just in seed form most of the year, waiting for that first year.
It takes up a lot of water.
That's right. Yeah. What else? What's something else that they need, that they compete for? Space is another thing. Sunshine. Sunshine. Native plants actually don't need a lot of nutrients in the here. So this was DWP, and this is how the hills were like this, right? And they were like fallow like this. And so what happened was that they were going to create like a nine-story office building here. And the community rose up. Actually, the fights were not that hard back then. Where the community over here, they collected 100 signatures to make this into a park and to give it back to the community instead of building an office building. Because then it would have looked like all the other roads that you came to, right? It would have looked just like that. And so the community fought for it. They went to their council member, Jose Huizar, and then he's like, okay, we're going to turn it into a park. And so DWP then leased it to Parks and Rec. And then they started to design it. And the community asked Northeast Trees to be part of it. Partially because we have a lot of projects around here, but also because Northeast Trees is based off of local communities. Right? I'm from Lincoln Heights. Where are you from? Loyal Heights? Loyal Heights. People are from, these aren't local neighborhoods that I'm talking about. Cypress Park, Highland Park. Like, we're from here, right? And that, I think, that, in my opinion, changes your relationship to the land. Like, if I'm going over to Orange County, it's not going to be the same, right? Or if someone from Orange County is coming here, it's not going to be the same. I'm not saying it's wrong or it's bad. I'm just saying there's going to be a difference. And I'm not saying that I won't be able to do a good job in Orange County either. It's just, but it's different, like overall. If you do it locally and you have the people designing it, building it, working it, tending to it, watering it, planting it, it's going to look different. It's going to feel special. Any questions? Yes.
If folks want to support the Black Walnut Tree, what can they do?
Cool. Okay, let's talk about the Black Walnut Tree. So, the Black Walnut Tree. So this is I wear a couple of hats. The other hat is I'm with the community. I organize with the community, and one of the things that we did was like we're suing the city, right? Northeast Trees isn't going to sue anyone. We build and design, right? But Coyote Masawali, which is another nonprofit, did sue the city and this real estate company from like Denver, Colorado, to stop that, because that hill has like one of the last standing black walnut groves in the Repeno Hill system that have survived 400, 500 millennia. They've probably been there for a very, very long time, uninterrupted. And so we sued, and so we're raising funds for that, for the lawyer, right? Because to get justice here, you need money. That's how it works. But what we're also doing is we're growing black walnuts ourselves. And then we have like 10 micro nurseries around the community. So I guess the ask is, if you have a space in your yard and you live in Northeast LA, please let me know. And I guess the other thing that you can do is we're going to have a couple of hikes. I'll send an email. We have 2 more hikes this month where you can walk more of these hills and learn more about the black walnut and then connect with the community. And if you're excited, you can connect more of them. But they're just hikes, so kind of maybe a little better in terms of like you're going to be moving around, you're going to get snacks and some drinks and different types of people interacting with you. There's going to be one tonight. Let me know if you're interested and you're still in the area. At Plateau.
I have a question.
Sure.
What are the components that Gama is speaking of connects to what we've been discussing in class? And you all have been doing some great presentations, so I know y'all have the answers.
Well, the policy part.
Mm-hmm.
I find that like a lot of design work has to do with like just fighting legal battles. It's kind of
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. Like policy is such a big hurdle. You know, like to plant a tree, there's so many rules that we have to follow. Partially it's because, I don't know, it's just, some of it are legitimate, like we have spacing guidelines when we put trees on the ground, and it's like you have to put it 20 feet away from a power pole, and then 8 feet away from a driveway. And it makes sense because like you don't want a tree to block someone from driving out, right? So, and that actually is contributing to, you know, poor neighborhoods not having trees. Because we're following these rules, and like, do we follow these rules and not plant trees, or plant smaller trees like power lines is another one, and then like spacing them apart because that urban forestry division wants to do work on them, and if we have them together, then they can't cut out. So they want to do like this. So it's like there's a lot of that, and abnormally, well, is it abnormal? It's normal. It just feels not right.
Well, I think a lot of the rules and the policies that you guys have to follow are designed to screw over pretty people.
Yeah.
Those policies are built for a specific group of people, for them to benefit, and then everyone else is going to take rock.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I could see that, especially with like Pasadena, where it's like I see people like squishing them together, right? And it's like, are there arborists being told the same way, right? In the city, right? Where we're working in South LA, it's like we're not being told that. I think a lot of it is antiquated. Right? Like we work in public housing, for example, and one of the rules is like you need to keep a green lawn from the federal government. Public housing, yeah. And when they do inspections at these public housing sites, like the inspectors need to see green grass, and the justification is green grass means safer community. Like that's the logic, and that's how people thought back in the day, right? So was that intended to screw people over? I hope not. But that's coming from like this very antiquated way of thinking that hasn't reached the time, because now we're in drop like now you have the state of California going like water less, don't kill your lawn but save the trees. That's what the state is kind of saying. Not exactly that, but forget the lawn, save the trees. Whereas the federal government is like, for the public housing, you have to keep the green grass. But then what happens with the urban heat island effect, right? Like it's so hot there, extreme heat. Like, where's the shade? If they have AC, like you have to crank it up, and that's gonna affect our like electrical, our energy system. So it's like, yeah, there is a lot of that. And I would say, I joke about it, I say I plant trees, but 90% of my work, my boss says it's even more, like 95, is not planting trees. It's actually dealing with these things and these absurdities and going like to the community, this is what's going on, but we can do this, but then also going to the community and going like, okay, you want fruit trees in the parkway where the city doesn't want them, how do we get that, right? And so like, a lot of my role is to live in this world of no, but trying to get a yes for everyone, right, as best I can. And it's like a long process, because it's like Northeast Trees has gained the respect of the Housing Authority of LA, which are managers of PACLA. And that wasn't one overnight. That was one like 20 years of relationships, right? Of maybe saying yes to them a little bit, but now that we have that authority at HACLA with like some of the top people, now the community is going like fruit trees, and we're like, okay, fruit trees, let's put fruit trees in the back and do it like this. And now HACLA and the managers are like, okay, let's try it. Let's make it work. I mean, it hasn't been done yet, but knock on wood, right? Yeah. We want to have, because that's the way to go.
This conversation is everything, because when we were reading Site Matters, we were talking about the European values that are centered in the different design considerations that historically have been used. And as Gamba explained, those are attached to policy requirements. And so there's elements of European expectations that are a part of compliance, right? And when we're living in the Southern California region, where those expectations are not fit for our region, how do we push back up against those things, change policy, or manage the design constraints that you have to be mindful of with your projects, right? We talked about design constraints, and Gama talked about that's a big part of his work, is navigating those design constraints and then communicating to the stakeholder that he's most vested in, which is the community, as far as with those design constraints, what can we do that meets your vision as community members, right? How can we work within those design constraints to achieve the most optimal outcome? But policy, especially with your role as landscape architects, is going to be a critical constraint, right? That you have to manage, but try to get to your optimal outcome within that.
Can I get a time check? Someone in from
Is that like a problem you guys deal with a lot? Just amazing trees.
But it's mostly
Oh, okay. So where I am, there's just
So this is the bioswale, yeah? Can you discuss how this was created and the importance of it? And then like how it changes through like different times of the season? How it will look different?
We try to capture rainwater.
also the soil is like super thick.
So when it rains from the top, it'll capture the water right here with the rocks, so it won't it'll just capture the water right here on top. These also are sambucas. Right now they look like pretty much like dry, but they'll come back deciduous.
So everyone, when y'all get a chance, Jose's gonna break down the use of the bioswale and how it was developed and the way that it's used for the site.
So it was developed, we used an excavator, and we just pulled the dirt this way, like, so kind of like just make a berm, and then the water will go that way first. The plants capture the water right from you can picture the pipe right here.
And so that's why you see the plants are still green near the bioswale, is because as that water collects throughout the year, it sustains it during the dry season. So you see that some of those trees still are green because of that bioswale, but they're competing, like Gama was explaining in the amphitheater, with the invasive species. So a lot of that water reserve is being depleted by the invasive mustard seed, the black mustard. So that's an example. But this also is an example of a landscape intervention, right? They have to incorporate this feature, this form onto site to mitigate the different challenges. Jose was mentioning like land erosion, water capture, right? And then again, creating the water reserves for the native flora and fauna.
I ran in like 5 years.
That's a great question. So, I mean, that's a conversation that is ongoing, and that is like at every tree conference. That's like one of the main things all the time. And we can have a conversation about this for a long time. But I would say definitely lean on science and the scientists. Personal observation is very important. So, like, what do you see, right? Science is important, but also what our observations are. Like Jose's wisdom and observations that he's accumulated over the years, like, is very, very informative as to. So, like, I mean, you can ask him, what should we plant here, and he'll have a general idea. Like, I can ask you now, right? Like, what 3 plants that you would plant here because of what you see.
I like Koyan because it's really drought tolerant. The little sumacs, they're really tough, and the black walnut, that's what I like her.
But then again, like, it's gonna get drier, right? So there's like 2 approaches that people are having, and again, like, I'm not too good at this, but there's one scientist that's like, well, look at hotter cities like Phoenix, Arizona, and this one's gonna be like that. So what trees are they planting now? Plant those, right? And then the other thing that I'm hearing is things are gonna go like the plants are migrating north, right? Because it's getting how does it work? So it's getting hotter near the equator, so the warmth is going to go up, so the plants are going to move northward. So look south and plant those here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's the same idea with Phoenix, Arizona.
Do you think that would lower the biodiversity though if we're all planting?
There's going to be an impact.
Yeah, because like I heard that like the middle of America towards like near the equator is gonna be like just desert.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna have like 3 biomes basically. the cooler, the deserts, and then like whatever. It's a lot of that. I don't know. But that just makes me worried about the biodiversity of things, which is kind of funny.
That's why it's a whole conversation, right? Like, and then you're right, and it's like we don't know, and climate change is unpredictable too, right? So it's like we're gonna get showers. Like we had a hurricane in San Diego.
Yeah.
Or was it a hurricane?
It was a
close.
hurricane. It was a hurricane warning.
There you go.
It was definitely a hurricane warning.
So it's unpredictability, right? And that's gonna be gone. So it's like, how do you predict this being unpredictable? Yeah, it's so. But I mean, nature is resilient, right?
Yes.
Like it's gone through so many things, just as bad, if not worse. Like if you look at the history of like Earth, like you'll see, like whoa, there's been a lot of stuff near extinction events. And so that's why I think like we should lean on nature and its wisdom and its knowledge. But we're also pretty good too, you know.
Yeah.
We have our minds, and we have each other, and we can work together. You know, that's the thing. We have to work together, right? We have to unite and confront this thing. I think it's manageable.
And Christopher Alexander was speaking to that a lot in our readings, right? Building sites that incorporate the needs of the site as well, instead of like trying to get the awards for your architectural design, right? And then also to answer your question, Jenna, too, it's building sustainable sites. We read urban sustainability through environmental design, and that's what this represents, right? When you're talking about sustainability, you want to have low touch infrastructure where it kind of manages itself. And so when we're talking about bioswales, not only does it create a water source for the site, but it does it on its own, right? So during the dry season, this is a water source for the vegetation that doesn't need to be managed, right? And so when we're talking about building, like addressing drought tolerance, it really is about building sustainable landscapes. For example, the government requirement to have green lawns requires too much maintenance, right? It requires too much irrigation. It requires too much water that is not from a natural source, right? Like a bioswale. But if we can encourage homeowners to create a bioswale or a rain garden, that would be a water source for your site, right? So again, creating sustainable landscapes is a great way to mitigate some of the things that we're experiencing related to drought.
Yeah. And then the plants work with each other. They'll take care of each other, right? But you got to create those systems as well.
We're gonna say this is a zone.
Yeah.
This is how it would low-key go, though.
Yeah, right. So this is not a natural water source. This is actually comes from a reservoir up the hill.
Okay.
And I don't know where it goes, but it comes out here and it feeds all the plants down the stream. And it's here year round.
How come nobody's making, look at this area, it's perfect.
It's cheaper right here.
And then collect the water.
Yeah. You're absolutely right.
And then we can use this water to water some plants. Maybe not for drinking, but
Yeah, for watering.
Some water.
Yeah, because it's
because
like,
this water is going somewhere and that's wasting water.
it's just gonna keep going.
Yeah.
During a drought. During the darn drought.
Yeah. So this idea came up with one community member, Jerry Schneider, who's been doing work for a very, very long time. And usually we get our water from like a water hose down by the parking lot. But he's like, let's just get some water from the stream because again, like you said, the water's going somewhere, let's use it.
Yeah.
Let's use it. So I don't know where it leads to. I think it leads to, well, it either goes back underground or it goes down a drainage somewhere.
It just gets lost in here, right?
Goes underground again.
Yeah.
We got bees right here.
So much color.
Do you want me to fill it?
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't know how much water we need.
I'd say as much as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, they're nice. But pull this out and you do it right. So I think one of the things is socioeconomic opportunities. We got to get more people doing this.
Pulling the weeds.
What I just did.
This is the black mustard. It's barely popping up right now.
Like this is a black mustard.
Shouldn't be popping up. They got this one right here. Oh, that's the black mustard. That's why it doesn't stop, baby.
Already getting next to the restoration plant.
Like 4 weeks ago. Yeah, about 4 weeks ago.
And what plant is being restored here?
This is the white sage.
The white sage.
And so we planted them in a particular way, right? Like they're in a basin. So whenever there's water, it collects. So when the rain comes, then it'll really shine, right? Because the water will collect here.
And then we have the cages. Yep. So like golfers, they want to eat the roots because they like the water. So they'll go for the roots.
And also maintenance workers, when they do brush clearance, for there not to be fires, they will cut that. They don't know that it's a native plant. Some of them. And so when you put that, they're like, oh, I gotta avoid that because I don't want to break my machine.
I'll water this one.
And then we would originally mulch them, so we didn't have anything to mulch.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
So does that mean these invasive plants are just in the ground at this point? Like, regardless, they're just everywhere?
Yeah.
Until there's like nutrients and they just spring up. They'll just sit there dormant and wait.
That's crazy.
Because the seeds spread, right? Like once they get old enough to mature and then they start spawning their seeds. Gama was saying how the native species aren't spawning as much because they're where they're supposed to be, so they have competition. Whereas the invasives, they don't have competition, so their spawning goes crazy. The mustard, the black mustard, it's crazy because it has no competition, right? I believe that they said the Spanish conquistadors introduced the mustard seed, and it was like a way for them to see that the land was fertile. But like now, look, it's everywhere, you know, and it's not being used anymore.
Also, a lot of natives are very slow growing. Like, I don't know why, but I just know from experience. I worked at a nursery, and I know a lot of people. Man, it was so frustrating working there because they would come in and be like, oh, I need to rip this out. I'm like, why? Why are you ripping all this out? You want to put some damn tulips there? They're gonna die in like a week.
It's not supposed to be there.
Like, dahlias, and I'm like, this is just not a good idea.
But then they're like, then there's like 100 people. They pack up to City Hall and say vote for this. They see that, they understand that, and so then they're like, okay, there's something in here that's cool. And for example, black walnut is one of them. People are about this black walnut. So the way they co-opt it is like, okay, look everyone, I'm gonna create this law. It looks really good, but it has no input from the community. It's just like the idea of him and his staff, and he knows that he doesn't have to put in that much work into it, and it's just a law, but it'll make him look good, right? And then some people will be like, that are part of the bigger movement, they'll be like, oh, actually that law is really cool, I'm gonna go with the council member, and it's like, you're putting your energy there, but then we're not gonna get everything that else that we need, which is black walnut is also anti-gentrification, anti-displacement, you know, anti-colonizer mentality, for the people, a little bit more socialist, right? And it's like it's not only about the black walnut, it's also about affordable housing. What about that, right? But the politicians is going to focus on like, let's create this one law that maybe will protect the tree. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What I've noticed a lot, I think there needs to be a lot more class solidarity within like lower income people, because like rich people don't agree with each other, they don't like each other, but they're like, hey, you're rich, I'm rich, like let's go, you know? And I don't think people like of normal incomes or lower incomes, they're not doing that. They're just bickering and fighting about, you know, things that don't really matter. You know, culture world things. It doesn't, grand scheme, it's nothing. Right. But the rich people, they're always going to be like that class solidarity, and I think people need to do that more.
Right.
Even across party lines too.
Yeah. No, seriously, it's like so it's insane because they don't agree on anything, but they get it done.
They concern more about making more money. And I don't know why they wanted to have more money if they already have the money, but that's the only concern that they have. So I don't understand. Um, they're gonna die sometimes.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, the money's gonna stay here. So I don't understand why. Well, I don't know.
What?
I wish I were a millionaire so I could.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll all be millionaires one day, and we can make those investments. So I like the way you're thinking with that, Herman.
I think now that I feel like our generations are gonna, again, like you said, we might become wealthy and stuff. But I'm well aware, like I don't want, I would like a native plant garden, honestly. Like I've even, talked to my family and stuff, and they weren't even aware of the drought and stuff. So they're, I guess, older generations are kind of like uneducated too. So I think that's where we're all gonna come in and kind of like, pass on our word.
And I think that's the problem why the rich people have, because a lot of them, they just make the money whatever they could and become richer. And after, and that's all what they got. And that's what I believe. They concerned about taking care of the money and make more money, because that's how they, I don't know, they got taught or somebody gave the money to them, and they don't have education. Education is very important because you understand a lot of things in life, and you understand how to help other people and each other. That's the point. Not concentrate about having a lot of money, because money. I'm not saying that money is terrible. Money is excellent to have money because you can do whatever you want with money, but you have to invest it too, and you have to help other people. If we want to have a healthy community, it's important to help each other and teach all those that doesn't know anything. So that would help our community to be better, and it's also very strong.
And I agree with everything, and I really appreciate this idea of money and the concept of what are you going to do with it, right? Because we're a very consumer-centered or focused society, and we just accumulate goods, just buy. If we all become millionaires and we buy, we're going to speed up climate change, right? So we have to rethink our values. That's why permaculture design considerations are really important when we're thinking about values, is because when we're purchasing or when we're building things, we're thinking about how does it fit within the ecosystem in which it will operate. And if you have something being introduced to an ecosystem that is not supposed to be there, it'll operate as an invasive species and deplete the existing resources that are needed for that ecosystem. So I really appreciate everything that was being said today. I'm going to be in awe of this for months to come, years to come. This is going to be very memorable. We've learned a lot about what we experienced today in class, but we saw it in real life. One of the things I want you all to consider is your role, right? When we're talking about roles and responsibilities and the what's next, you have many hats. We talked about many hats. So you all will have many hats in these conversations. As a landscape architect, as an advocate, as well as an impacted person, right? And so thinking of all of those hats, that all should inform different design considerations. But like Gama said, I think what's really critical is that every initiative that you all do as design architect is informed by community. And you all will have to be very intentional with that practice. You will have to go out of your way sometimes to make sure that that is achieved. And you may not always be able to do it through direct engagement, but you can always do it through research. There are existing resources, reports, narratives, historical analysis of what is happening to your site that you always want to be mindful of, so that you make sure that that is considered, right, in all of the landscape interventions you'll introduce to site. All right. And then last thing I'll say is the constraints of site. We talked a lot about constraints, and those are the parameters in which you can manifest your design vision, right? So as a landscape architect, in that role, because you'll be playing many roles, but in that role, you're really trying to account for all those constraints and make sure you get to the most optimal design outcome with those constraint considerations.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Possibly separate like native plants from like invasive species. I kind of wish I asked them that too. If in some scenarios, because especially when it came from the bioswale, I think they kind of integrated with like native and native and invasive species. So I was kind of curious more on like what in what scenario too would it be like appropriate to combine them or like separate them, like in terms of the condition and everything. But like something I learned too is that like how he was kind of giving out a little lecture on like some of the future projects that were coming here that they were prevented because like some of the existing policies like the California Environmental Quality Act or like SECA. But I forgot though if it was like if it was like a policy that came before or afterwards. So I kind of wish I asked that. But, yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Edgar?
I guess just experiencing here for the first time. I've never been here before. I didn't even know this park existed. Still new to the area regardless. But just right now when I spoke to him before he left, he said that a lot of some of the issues that they have is they lack public interest and they also lack funding to continue, and it's like some of the things that they foreshadow that is a challenge for them to continue this project. Just seeing the kind of California native plants that they're trying to plant, and kind of excited to see what this is going to look like in the near future. They're continue to develop this land and return it to what it used to be. Yeah.
Nice.
I like seeing, like, actually getting to see the bioswale and having them explain and having Jose like walk through and like tell us like each plant. And one thing I remember is like can't remember if it was called the cottonwood tree. They don't like placing on the hills just because it eats up a lot of water. And I liked Jose showed us cowboy cologne, where like I liked actually feeling it and then like
smelling it
and just getting those like interactive little aspects of the trip. That way you actually remember like, the little things. And I liked also hearing about all the like the legal battles that, about policy. That was really interesting.
Awesome.
I also enjoyed the bioswale, but I didn't know too much before about it. And then I liked how in person, like we could actually see how much effort it takes to like keep a sustainable environment and keep the invasive species away from the natives.
The huge takeaway I learned was like how money could be a huge restraint on like funding organizations, lawyers, and just like the labor to have something like this happen for pushing sustainable environments forward. But I also enjoy like bioswales and just seeing how quick the invasive plants and how close they grow to the native plants that they were planting. That was pretty crazy. I never saw something like that.
Clara? Honorary member of the course.
So I'm from Colorado. I was really annoyed to find out, because I don't know anything about landscape architecture. I was just really annoyed to find out that like the plants here, because they're not native, they're causing their own drought. I've been here, but only at the parking lot, so it's a nice park.
It was nice to get out and be in nature and walk around. I wish to be able to do that more often. And one thing I learned, I had no idea. This was all black mustard. I thought it was just part of the California landscape and how invasive it is.
Right. It's everywhere, right? It's like, oh, I know that.
Yeah, I would also have to agree with that because this was like my first time seeing like black mustard seed, like how invasive it is like up close and in person. Because also like driving by Pomona, usually like you always see it, and like I've always assumed that it's like native, but I guess not. But I really liked seeing how like the bioswale had like all the plants that were native sort of like greening, and then it was just kind of a little sad to see like the invasive species overtaking that. And something that I learned or took away was that there were like certain policies that were really inequitable and like outdated that sort of just like struck my interest, and those are just some things I'd like to like look further into.
I found it interesting that the site history is rather similar to the Bayona wetlands. and that they both had to like sue these people trying to develop
Mm-hmm.
like
It's a lot of stakeholder competition with sight.
I just enjoyed being outside mainly, and I also had no idea about the black walnut, so I'm gonna go home and probably tell everybody about it.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I like that.
Mm-hmm. You can go now.
I can go. I've been here before, but last time I was here, I was pretty small. I was maybe about 3, maybe 4. And what I do remember is that a lot of this area here used to be, it wasn't as green as you see it right now. So, you know, coming back after well over 10 years has given me a little bit of insight on how, actions to restore the environment locally can actually have a really big impact on the landscape itself. And I thought it was really striking to know that currently, you know, I remember he was talking a little bit about the black walnut tree and how they drop their seeds a little bit early. I think it's important for people to know things like that and how that can have a really big role in the ecosystem, considering that a lot of people in this country still believe that climate change is a myth and that we actually have no long-standing impact on the environments that we come from. So that was one of my major takeaways from this field trip. And again, I kind of do want to emphasize that it was very intriguing to me that this place looks so much more different than how I remember it. So yeah, I think it's important for people to learn a little bit more about like the efforts that people go through to restore the environments in Los Angeles and things like that.
I appreciate you sharing that, right? Like the glimpse from your lived experience into the past, because you've experienced the site before it was rehabbed to its current state, and you experienced it when it was less green, and the intentionality behind what this site has now become. It took effort, it took time, and it took intentionality. So I appreciate you sharing that glimpse into the past from your lived experience. Hermilo?
Well, my takeaways, I think I have only 2. I didn't know that the mustard is called black mustard, and I think that's because it's too invasive. And I know that's edible, and I didn't know that people just don't like that very much because it grows like a weed. And I see right here how it's just all over. And my second one is the native plants. I live in San Diego and I see those plants right in the hills a lot.
And we got canyons in San Diego.
Right.
This is San Diego, just everywhere, everywhere.
Yeah, you see them a lot, and I'm impressed that I got very impressed that they tried to grow those bushes up here, and they take care of them. And in San Diego, nobody concerned about those bushes. They're just all over the place.
Yeah.
Nobody goes right there and irrigate them. So
it's just natural.
That was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what they get. Oh, and I can mention a few more things. Has some nice clouds, and here and there I saw some beautiful flowers. I'm not sure if those are called black eye Susan or just I just called San Diego. I can't remember what the one is called. I photographed it there, so
Yeah, definitely share those.
So yeah, so that's what I can take with me.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Something I found interesting too, or again, is going back to the black mustard. Is that what it's called?
Yes, the black mustard.
Yeah, because I mean, we do see it everywhere, and a good takeaway that I liked is the area where they're planting the sage and all these other plants. I found that very interesting, although I did talk to Jose and I asked them whether there was like plans to expanding this to a bigger, like, you know, maybe bringing the community or maybe having volunteers, maybe reach out programs, or like, you know, they could bring possibly maybe even high school kids out here, you know, to kind of like volunteer and maybe help out the ecosystems. So he said at the moment there's not, but there's not many plans on to like really expanding this, and all that comes back to like he said that they are based off of grants. So again, I think it all comes down to like money and
Yeah.
also
that's a
like
big
outreach
factor.
programs. I think one of my classmates here mentioned that the communities don't know about these issues, right? Like they're just living, but again, I think this is where our generations are going to come in and like educate them and possibly, I mean, who knows, maybe in the future I'll probably start some type of outreach program where like I would like to, now that I know about this, I may be able to do that. So and also because this reminds me, as when I was a kid, I was in high school actually, we were tasked and we volunteered to go to the Santa Monica mountains to plant trees, as
Nice.
as a type of like community service type of thing. And I remember that, but I've never done it again. So
Right.
and I think those programs need to kind of like be implemented and educate people.
Definitely. I feel like Gama was speaking to that as a economic opportunity. There can be job opportunities to help maintain some of the invasive species and the weeds and stuff, and offer that to students, right? To college students who do landscaping, right? Because that's a way for you to get intimately engaged in the land, but also make sure that it's an economic opportunity attached to it, but also as a stewarding of the land as well. So I know you two weren't able to go on the hike with us, but were you able to like, what are the takeaways that you've gotten from being present today at the park? And then just hearing everybody speak.
So far, from just the hearing like everyone's interaction, it's just built that relationship. You can't really have that relationship until you really go out and have that one-on-one experience. So it's really great to hear like everyone's like comments about it, and after hearing that those comments, I can go look back and attach like even more personal level, because I have your guys' sort of this like lens at first. When someone gives you this expectation, you go into it, and then that's how relationships are made.
Yeah. No,
so
that's
far,
spot on.
And plus, it's really nice going outside and like feeling the cool climate currently. Past we are like having these seasons of droughts, intense heat, as climate change.
Yeah, you said it's a lot cooler here during the summer than almost somewhere else. I don't know if it's because of the elevation or being farther away from the city.
It's
but
the trees. And this is why, when we're talking about heat islands, why having trees are really important. Canopies, overhead canopies is critical. But no, thank